Not that I want to, but if I need to preach tomorrow, I'll preach. Just let me know. I got to the house and I opened the door and my dad said, thank you. I said, for what? You're preaching tomorrow. And I said, oh, okay. So here I am, and we're here. On the screen you see, so what now? Where do we go from here? So like preface, this is something that I actually had the opportunity to speak at a men's conference about a month ago, and what we were leading up to is saying, like, we know that most of us agree that God is God and Jesus is Jesus. But like, what do we do with that? Where do we go from here? Like, we hear sermons, we go to classes. I've heard a phrase before, there's Bible study or there's Bible doing. We can just talk about it or we can actually do something about it. And so this talk this morning is kind of geared towards like, what do we do with it? At least my interpretation of what we can do with it. And so, to start us off, there's a story. Many of y'all may have heard these stories, but I've heard it said like, any story worth hearing more than once. Don't tell someone about Jesus if you're not willing to like open up your home. If you're not willing to go stay up at 10 o'clock at night laying concrete when it's super cold. That was the AJ again saved my life as we were pouring concrete. But like, don't just say, oh hey, like I'm gonna pray for you and then do nothing about it. We get that, but it's like so oftentimes where we say, hey, I can pray about this. Prayer is good, but what can you like do to help? Like if it's in your means, make something and do something. In our young adult class, one of the things we're talking about is an Acts. After the whole spiel of like going on, so like context, I think I mentioned the last week maybe, is Peter is saying, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. Like break bread, spend time in prayer, take care of one another, and study the Bible. Those are some of the 4 things that you do. But to step back a little bit, one of the things that's talked about is like they took care of one another. None of them had needs. This is in Acts 2. Like they were there. And so like they prayed about it, but they actually did something about it. And so like as we step into this, like faith is not just something you do showing up. Showing up is great, participating is great, but like participating is the key. And so I'm going to start off with looking at the commission. It says, Jesus said to his followers, go everywhere in the world and tell the good news to everyone. Like, it's actually as you go, there's an expectation, but then it's the question of, what exactly is the good news? You have freedom from what? It's that, like, you ever find yourself kind of in a bind? It's like, I know I'm supposed to go and tell people about God, but what do I tell them? Like, yeah, God's good. He's doing good. But like, what exactly am I trying to share? And so that's kind of where we're going to go this morning is, what exactly is that good news? Or at least get you to think about, what am I sharing? Because if I just go to your door and say, did you know Jesus Christ died for your sins? That may not be it may be good for some of us, but like for everybody, yeah, been there, done that, heard that. How does that impact my own life? When I was in Thailand back in 2018, I heard a story that kind of shook me. So when the missionaries at the time went for the first time, this group that I was working with back, early 90s, they were trying to go and say, oh, you need Jesus and it's the greatest thing ever. He can forgive you of your sins. And the Thai people are like, we don't have sin. We're not sinful people. We don't sin. Because that word sin wasn't in the vocabulary. Like it wasn't translated. They didn't have that word. They were not sinful. So then all of a sudden these missionaries are like, how do we convince the local people that they're sinful and that they need God? And that became kind of an issue. And they thought about it. Me trying to convince you that you're a horrible person probably isn't the best approach to get you to come in and actually learn about God. So then they're kind of shook because they've been told their entire life, hey, go into the world, baptize people for the forgiveness of their sins. But if they don't think they're sinful, how do we do it? You kind of get the complexity of the nature or the issue. what they soon discovered is their entire culture, honor and shame. Shame is something that's, they're like, oh wait, he can forgive my shame? Sign me up. Like the idea, like, if you don't know, I'll give you a little bit of a snapshot. Honor, shame, culture, like 101. Everything you do is tied up into your honor. Your kid acts wrong, your kid's shameful, that can bring shame on your family, and then like the city or the community can like kind of cast you out because now you're shameful. They don't do the picture perfect thing. And so in that culture, once you get shame, you kind of can't get rid of shame. Like you kind of have that scarlet letter, so to say. Like, there's no getting rid of it at all. And when they said, hey, like God wants to take away your shame, like, wait, you can restore my honor? Are you serious? Like, God can do that? Then all of a sudden, they brought something to the people that was tangible, that was important to them. And so when we're sharing the gospel, whatever it is, not that we have to try extra hard to make it relevant, but what one good news is for one person and what it's good news to somebody else, it may not be the exact same. That's what kind of makes the beauty of it. But the idea is it isn't meant to be forced. They were trying to force down on a point that wasn't happening. But when they realized how they could shift the conversation, it's like, oh, now I get it. That tracking somewhere making sense? And so I mentioned this actually, I think the last time I preached was, just look at this for a second. What did Jesus do? When he went to people, he asked 300 questions. He was asked 183, and he only answered a few, directly, right? We talked about this a while back if you were there. Because he didn't have all the right answers. How often in your own life someone asks you a question, you have the answer? Someone asks you a question spiritually at the Bible, you have the answer. Oh, I got it. Boom, got it. Not that that's wrong. But what would it look like? Say Connor comes to me. Connor, wave. That's Connor right there. And he's like, hey, Tripp, what is, I'm going, this is my life, what do I do? Well, Connor, you should do this, this, and this. Or, hey, let's figure it out together. Let's get in the Bible, let's see what the Word has to do, let's study, and let's figure it out together, and we're in this together. I'm going to dare to say the second approach is going to be better than the first approach. First, just having the right answer. And Jesus modeled that. I mean, he was asked a whole lot of questions, and very rarely did he actually just answer it. And so kind of like a reflection piece for a second. In your own life, do you have all the right answers? Do you give all the right answers? You may not think you do, but if I ask the people that know you best, are you the person who knows it all, who has all the right answers? Or are you the one that models more of what Jesus did? Something to think about. So wait. Pause. Hold up. We need to recognize that following Jesus is a journey. When the disciples were summoned, called, hey, come follow me, they didn't have all the right answers. They figured it out as they went. And sometimes we think that when we become a Christian, we're supposed to know all the answers. We're supposed to. We're a Christian. I'm supposed to know everything. That's not the case. It is a journey, and as we're walking through that journey, this journey called life, that's where the beauty is, right? Think about different journeys you've done yourself. Sometimes the journey there means more than the actual endpoint. I think about Trek. Savannah and Isaiah, we're on Trek. Summit's beautiful, but all the stories we shared were on the struggle up the mountain. And so when we're following Jesus, it's a journey that we keep going through together. Now, who did Jesus meet on this journey? I have a list. The disease. Think about the leper. What did he do to the leper? He went and met the leper. The one person that nobody wanted anything to do with. He met them there. In the movie, the series The Chosen, one of my favorite episodes. There's a leper. They're walking there, and I was like, whoa, don't go near him, Jesus. He's a leper. And Jesus is like, be quiet, watch this. And then walks over there and meets him where he's at. In your own life, are you meeting the people that other people want nothing to do with? There are people in your life like, yeah, I don't want to go around them. That's who he pursued. The disabled, the lame man. Think about when your mind starts running, right? You can think about these people. Like, these are the people that couldn't do much for themselves, maybe. We went there and said, hey, how can I help? Mentality. The thieves. Think of Zacchaeus. This man took advantage of everybody. And what do you do? I'm coming to your house, man. Like, when was the last time you invited yourself over to someone's house? I invited myself over to Isaiah's house about a month ago. It was great. We had some, what was it? Some Vietnamese food. But like, when are you inviting yourself over? When are you meeting the people, again, that no one wants to be around? The cheaters. And you get an adult, you get that, right? An adult woman? Yeah, I don't need to explain that. The outcast. The lady at the well. He goes and he meets her. So like, look at the people who he met. It wasn't the popular. It wasn't the cool people. It was the people that like no one wanted anything to do with. And in our own life, are you pursuing those people? If we're always just around the same people doing the same thing, are we following Jesus' journey? I'm not trying to say like, oh, you need to go find all these bad people. Bad fellas, right? We're all struggling with different things, y'all. At some point in our lives, we've been diseased, we've been disabled, we've taken advantage of somebody, we've cheated somehow, we haven't been the picture perfect person. But those are the people who Jesus met. And so, what did he do? One, he knew how to take initiative. Like, he took the first step. Sometimes we just sit there and we wait. We're like, oh, well, when they come to me, I'll talk to them about it. They're just going to show up at my doorstep. They're going to walk in through this front door and want to be a part of our church. He usually met people on their own turf. He went to them. He didn't expect them to come to him. He went to them, and then he was trying to find common ground. Like in conversation. He's like, he tried to find something that was relatable. And so, again, thinking about us, we need to be people who take initiative. And I'm not saying we're not, I'm just speaking in terms, but we need to go meet people where they're at and spend time where they're at without saying, oh, you need to come where I'm at. And then finding common ground. So, Jesus had a radical ethical stance. What does that mean, Trevor? You've heard it said, don't murder. I tell you, don't hate somebody. That's kind of radical, right? Like, he's comparing hate and now murder in the same stance. Like, Jesus, he raised the bar. And like, oh, did he raise the bar? But he had a stance where he was trying to change what people were thinking. He was saying, yeah, you're used to doing this. What if we did this? What would it look like if we did this? And people knew where he stood. One of my favorite quotes is, those who were condemned by his love were but no. See, okay, I had this error on the slideshow and I forgot to change it. My bad. What it should say is, those who were condemned by his words were compelled by his love. In other words, don't do this, don't do, like, you knew what was right and wrong with Jesus. Like, he didn't like put up with sin. Like, he's like, yep, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. In other words, yeah, you say don't murder, yeah, don't hate either. Yeah, you say don't have an affair, yeah, don't look at them wrong either. Like, he raised the bar, yet the people who fell victim to his words were compelled by his love. So in your own life, when we're speaking truth into people's lives, or like calling out the sin in their life, sure. Do they still feel your love? When we're trying to have a stance and saying like, hey, this is who we are we still attracting people who are broken? And that's pretty hard, right? Like, if you think about it, he literally said like, dude, what you're doing is wrong, but I still love you for who you are. I still see you for who you are. And because, like, the Samaritan woman, he met her where she was at, versus just saying, hey, you're wrong. So with this, what can we do? What do we do? And I have a few bullet points to look at. So one of the things is stop caring about what you might look like. And choose the partner with Jesus. Saying a little bit slow so maybe it sticks. Too often we care about what other people think. Am I right? We don't do something, we don't say something because they might judge us. They might look at us differently. They might say, ooh, like, you one of those Christians? I'm like, yes, I'm one of those Christians. Like, you fill in the blank. Like, too often, people in large, maybe it might not be you, we are paralyzed by about what other people think. We do things at work a certain way, and we don't talk about certain things because we don't want to be judged. We do things over here. We don't speak up. We don't volunteer to do this. We don't want to say something because we're afraid of who's going to get judged. One of the things in class we mentioned this morning with the young adults, like sometimes we don't want to pray out loud because we don't want people to judge us. Who cares what they think? You're praying to God. You're not praying to the people next to you. And so could you imagine what would that look like if we just stopped caring and just did what we were supposed to do? I mean, yeah, you can make the argument it's important, like, not to, because there is, like, the far side of it. I don't care what you think, I'll do whatever, like, okay, no. But, like, the idea of just stop caring about what they think and care about the one person who matters, God. What he thinks matters. Are you comfortable? We need to get comfortable sharing our own story. Like, where has God worked in your own life? Where are you currently struggling? What is a victory you had last year? What is a victory you had last month, yesterday? What is something you're working towards? How often, like, you ever, like, known someone for a whole long time, and I said, hey, tell me about them. And you're like, well, they work at my work. They might have 3 kids, a wife, and they like going on vacation. Like, how much do you actually know about that person? And there are other people where we know the struggles. One of the issues, again, this is from Tripp's perspective. These are my words. I can count on one hand how many grown men in my life who I know what they struggle with. Growing up, I thought all the men in the church were these saints, all these great men. I'm like, man, I'm struggling with this. I can't go to them and tell them this. They're going to think bad about me because I don't know their story. And so then, our younger generation, guess who they're not going to? They're not going to you. They're not going to us, because if they don't know you've been there and done that, they're not going to. I promise you. They go to each other. I see that in my schools, where I work. I see that in the youth ministry. Like, every year at camp, we go to camp, and all of a sudden, all these teams are sharing all this stuff. And we're like, what do we do with this? I don't even know. Like, last year, luckily, we had a counselor in our professional counselor in our group at camp. So I'm like, dude, how do I respond to this? Because their parents don't know, their church doesn't know, and now they've been holding on to this, they've shared everything. Like, what do we do with this? And it was, we figured it out kind of thing. And part of the fear, this is again me saying, is like, if I share what I've done and I turned out okay, they're going to think that it's okay to do it. That's a very good excuse not to share. Good job. They're not going to go to you, they're going to go to their friends. I mean, y'all following me right now? I want to make sure like it's making sense. Like, we need to share what we, again, it's a fine line, like where you do it, who you do it with. Yes, you got to have some wisdom there. But I'm 28 years old, and I can count on one hand how many grown men have shared their life with me. And I was born and raised in the church. I went to grad school for theology. Like, think about that. I know, actually, I think maybe like 2 or 3 men who I know their struggle. I've known what they've done and how God's worked through that. Guess who I've never really gone to? Never gone to a single person in my own church to share what I've gone through. Because I don't know what's happening. And that's not meant to be like a shameful bash. But like what we can do as we move forward is create space to actually share our testimony and like to share the real, raw. That way when our younger generation is coming up, they know who they can go to. They know who they can turn to. And I know that can be scary. Oh, can that be scary? Because, well, they're going to look at you differently. So, there's a guy named Lee Haddon. If he's watching this, child, Lee Haddon. He lives in North Carolina. He's my mentor. What does it mean to be a mentor? He leads me in the right direction. But I know his struggles. He knows my struggles. And like neither one of us try to say we have all the answers. But we're open, honest, and raw. He is discipling me. Not that he knows all the answers, but that when I'm going through life, I can share stuff with him and he can help point me in the right direction. There is nothing that says if you want to be a disciple of Christ or disciple of others that you have to have all the answers. It's just that you got to be real and point to the one who has all the right answers. But it gets scary because it's like, well, oh my goodness, like you're going to view me differently. And I'm like, no, I respect you even more because you were willing to tell me where you've been. And in the church, if we want to be a part of God's redemptive story, we've got to share how God has redeemed us. I don't need you to answer this out loud, it's kind of weird. When was the last time you told somebody your deepest, darkest secrets, or your deepest, darkest struggle? Either how you need God's help, or how God has helped you get out of it. When was the last time? And if you think about that, you're like, oh, something needs to change. Now, again, another talk, another day, like how you do that, what does that look like? But oftentimes we overcomplicate it. And I don't want to like keep going again and again on this train, but like you need to share. Because when you share, the Bible becomes alive. If I go and say, well, oh, you need to read this, there's no context. If I say, hey, we're going to read this and I'm going to show how it works in my life, then there's context. One of my favorite stories, many of you have heard this story, is from the Boys and Girls Club. When I first moved here, I was jobless, full-time grad student, not knowing what I was going to do in my life. Because living in Louisiana was not my plan. But I'm here now, 5.5 years later? Wow, crazy. But volunteering for the Boys and Girls Club and having fun, goofing off with the kids. And we had a group come in from Oklahoma from Wild City Mission that year. It was in March. And we spent the week over there doing stuff. And then I'm like, oh, it's pretty fun. I enjoy playing with those kids, doing games and having fun with them. I don't have a job. Let me go back on Monday. And I went back on Monday. And the kids said, you came back? I'm like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm here. And I talked to the director and I said, dude, what was that about? He says, these kids don't have consistency. They have people come in and do great stuff all the time, but no one comes back. What these kids need is a consistent role model in their life. Not just someone who shows up and does something big and grand. And sometimes in our own life, we think that if we want to make an impact, we've got to do something crazy awesome. It's like, no, you don't. All you have to do is be a consistent person who keeps showing back up. The person who's going to be there regardless. That's what people need. So, guess what? I started going back like every day for the next few months. Like, I'm like, man, I'm going to try to be that. And this one kid always got in trouble. Oh my gosh. Always. He always got put on the wall because that's the way they do corrective behavior there is, hey, you'll sit on the wall for a timeout. And this kid got in trouble. If not every day, like every other day, he's always getting on the wall and I'm like, dude, was it worth it? And he's like, it wasn't worth it, man. And I'm like, well, we need to do better. You can do better. And I did that every day. And I'm like, dude, what do you want in life? I said, I want to be a football player, man. I want to go to the NFL. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Ask this kid here. I said, but you realize, like, coaches don't want people who have attitudes. Really? I said, no, they don't want that at all. Trying to build the kid up, right? And then I had to leave for like a week. I was out in North Carolina. And then I came back. And when I came back, I walked in the door. Same kid who said, you came back. Same kid, again and again and again. Oh, Mr. Tripp, what's up? What do you notice different? And he had like this highlighted hair. And I'm like, Is your hair different? I'm not on the wall. Like this kid wanted to make sure I knew that he was not on the wall. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And I go and talk to the staff members and I'm like, dude, like, no, like, he didn't get in trouble at all when you were gone. And he didn't get in trouble again and again and again and again. I didn't do anything in that kid's life other than I showed up, I spent time with the kid, and tried to help encourage him to be a better version of himself. People notice that. You notice that. You can probably think of people in your life who have just been there consistently and the impact they've had on your life. That is something we've been called to do. Now, remember, Jesus probably didn't like everybody, but he loved everybody. Now, some of you might be thinking, what do you mean Jesus didn't like everybody? The dude flipped tables. Like, he flipped them. He was mad. Like, I don't gotta like you, but I gotta love you. And like, think about it. I mean, he was human. There were people that he probably didn't like what they were doing. He didn't like their behavior, but he chose to love them. He chose to die for them. And that's the difference. It's like, in your own life, you don't gotta like everybody, but you need to make sure you're loving them. And that can look different depending on who it is, but you get the idea. And so, when in doubt, this is what you can do. Like, if all else fails and you remember nothing that I've said this morning, love God, love others. We overcomplicate that like a whole lot, but like the root of the gospel, the root of the Bible, love God, love other people. And how can you do that? Show up. Show up. Like, make it an effort to show up. If someone invites you to something, or you can be there for something important, be there. We have a million good reasons, but not one of you has a good excuse. We can have all the reasons why I can't be there, but at the end, it's just an excuse, is what it usually feels like. Show up. Be real. Like, let people know that you don't have it all together. Don't pretend to have it all together. Just point to the one who does. Ask questions, but don't just say, hey guys, how's work going? You liking that feed store? Like, ask genuine questions about something. And if someone says something, remember it later on. There was a businessman, I do not remember his name, so he will not get the credit for this story, but it is what it is. He was one of the most successful business people, like in modern day terms, billionaire. Like, it's a lot of money. Like, they said, what's the secret? He says, man, every single time I'm talking to somebody, I got my notepad. I take notes after every single conversation. And when I see them again, I bring up what we talked about. So if your daughter was in college or getting ready to enroll, 2 years later, hey, how's school going for her? And when he did that, people realized he was being genuine. He was actually taking interest in their own life. And so then the business deals just came. People are like, oh, yeah, I'll do business with you. Like, you're a friend. You're not just this business deal. So apply that to your own Christian walk. Are you being intentional with the people you do life with? Are you asking questions? Are you seeking to get in their life? But then, like, are you listening? Are you genuinely listening? And again, all of this is saying, like, you could be doing a great job of this. You could be doing a horrible job of this. Or you could be somewhere in the middle. But when we look at the life of Jesus, he met the people no one wanted to meet with. He spent time with those people, and the people knew that he cared. And that's something that we get to be a part of. And I know there are plenty of you who do this, and that is great. We need to keep doing it. I just had like a teacher moment, so I started asking questions, and I'm like, I'm not in class right now. I can't ask my students questions. You're not my students. So like, as a teacher, you can talk and you ask questions. You like partner talk to your partner. How about this? It may or may not work. There are 4 things: showing up, being real, asking questions, and listening. I want you to pick one that you could be better at. I asked you to participate. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. I'm going to say each one and just pick one of those 4 that you could improve in. Which one of these 4 could you get better at? So whether it's you could get better at showing up for things, you could get better at being kind of honest and real, you could get better at asking intentional questions with people, or you could get better at actually listening. So, if you think, I'll give you about 30 seconds to think. Pick one that you could get better at personally, like right here, right now. Okay? If showing up is one, raise your hand. Okay, look at the ones raising their hand. You're raising your hand, just so you can identify who it is. If being real is something you can get better at, raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Asking questions, raise your hand. Okay, hands down. And then better at listening. Okay. If you'd like to get better at all 4, raise your hand. That's me. I'd like to get better at 4, right? Okay. Then do it. Don't just take it and then walk out and don't do anything. This week, today, like when I say 5, you get done in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, like start practicing one of these. Alright? That's all I got. Thank you for listening to me. My dad will be back next Sunday. Before we have more than 12 hours.